Hello, this is a prepaid call from
Anthony Duke.
This call is from a correction facility and is subject to monitoring and recording.
It just wouldn't make sense anyway, other than it had to have been someone that knew him or that was close to him.
I don't know if she wants to get involved and stir a bunch of crap up again, so...
Hello, and welcome back to 1 Minute Remaining. My name is Jack Lawrence, the host and creator of this show. If this is your first time listening, welcome. And we have 4 previous fascinating cases ready for you to binge right now. Today is part 1 of my chat with Anthony Duke, or Tony. Mr. Duke.
Hello?
How are you, sir?
Hello. I'm all right.
Mate, it's
yourself?
I'm very well, thank you. It's great to finally get to talk to you.
Yeah, here we are.
Tony and I have been chatting for some time. We actually have probably spoken the most via email than I have with any of the other men or women. It took Tony a little while to warm up to the idea of interviewing with me about his story and his life. But once we got chatting, I believe he found the whole experience quite cathartic, started to open up more and more. What's a day look like for you these days?
Get up, go to breakfast, say my prayers, have some coffee, study my Bible, go outside, work out.
Are you in a cell situation, or are you in a large room with a number of people?
No, I'm in a 2-man cell.
You get along with your bunkie?
Yeah, we'll get along. You know, you have to, or you make the best of it.
Yeah, true. It's someone you spend a lot of time with, I suppose.
Right.
Tony is currently serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole for the ultimate crime.
I was convicted of second-degree murder and felony murder, 2 separate charges. First-degree home invasion, larceny in a building, felon in possession of a firearm, and 5 felony firearms, 1 for each one of the charges I was just mentioned. A mandatory life without the possibility of parole for the felony murder. They merged the second-degree murder in with the felony murder for the sake of sentencing purposes, so not to double jeopardize me.
It's probably good to be clear from the very start that you are very adamant and always have been that you were not the person who committed this crime.
Correct.
Tony is a deep thinker and a very religious man. He's a man who likes to write, but also who likes to ask me as many questions as I throw at him. There's been many a morning when I've woken up to an email from Tony with a riddle or 2 for me to solve. Just fun, cryptic questions you might find in a trivia game or hidden inside a Christmas cracker. Or just questions for me about life and family. Now, as you know, the people I speak with are talking to me from inside correctional institutions. Some more chaotic than others. And Tony's would definitely be the loudest. So did you, just quickly on your upbringing, did you come from I'm not sure where in the prison Tony talks to me from, but most of the time there's people yelling, loud banging, and the odd interruption, as Tony is seemingly approached by other inmates asking questions.
So you literally have to go there and get... Hey, dude in the shower. And, I can't do this right now, bro. He's in the shower. He'll be out. I put it in the line. They ain't even nowhere around. All right. So, I hate this place.
But nonetheless, we push on with his story. Tony has by no means been a saint all his life, and I think would be the first one to admit he made some questionable choices as a younger man. As with most of the men and women I speak with, we chatted about his life growing up, and I asked him if his home life was a happy one.
No, definitely not a happy home. They were divorced when I was really young. In fact, the man I referenced to as my father adopted me when I was 9 months old.
Right.
And I didn't even know that he wasn't my real father until I was 14.
How did you feel about that when you found out at 14 that he wasn't your real father?
No, that my mom lied to me.
Yeah.
She told me that she's my mother and that we don't lie to each other. And when I found out about that, I felt betrayed because I didn't understand why who I thought my father wasn't around, and I always thought it was me. I didn't know what or why, what I did.
Do you know who your real father was?
Yeah, I know who he is. I knew him at that particular time when it came about. I just thought he was a friend of my mom's. She just thought I needed some sort of a male role model in my life. So it was someone I went and worked on cars with and went mud bogging with. And then I was asking why she was always talking to him on the phone. And that's when she sat me down and told me the truth.
So, just like with a lot of the other men and women I speak with, he had a tough life growing up. And from what he tells me, he was a pretty scrappy kid, finding himself getting into fights quite often.
Yeah, I got in a lot of fights growing up. I came home one time from school with a bloody nose because someone punched me. And I didn't like what my dad said to me. Told me I should never come home crying like a bitch. So I never again came home as losing a fight.
That's a pretty full-on thing for a dad to say to a kid.
Yeah, I think I was in the 3rd grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
He was quite a tough man.
Yeah, he was. I seen the difference between how he was with us growing up and how he was with my little brother. There's a 10-year difference. And it's just like everything. We all got to learn. We got a learning process and a growing process. You know, we never get it right the first time. We can only do what it is that we know, and we're taught from who it is we learn from.
It's very true.
And then we learn from our own mistakes. We all learn from our own mistakes and try not to repeat the wrongs that we did. I don't think he did anything out of spite or anything. Just, I don't know. I think he was just trying to, do the best he knew how to raise a kid. So I always felt I had something to prove.
Yeah.
That I couldn't let him down.
So any fight you would get in, you always would fight to win.
Correct. Sometimes I might have overreacted and jumped the gun, out of just lack of intelligence, pure ignorance, whatever. Just because I knew what would come if I came home like that again.
But for a kid that young to come home upset after being in a fight, to get that response from your father would definitely leave a mark. And as Tony would tell me, it certainly did on him. He would spend the rest of his life trying to do what he could to get his father's approval. I asked Tony to talk me through what he was doing in the lead up to the situation that would find him in jail for life. And I quickly learnt that Tony was no stranger to the inside of a prison cell.
Well, I paroled from prison in February 2011. And I came home to my house that I got from my mother when I was 16. And my sister was currently living there taking care of it after graduating high school. I came home and literally went to work at my father's landscape company, plowing snow. And then I had a couple buddies that picked me up. And we have some hot spots we know of for where we used to be able to, growing up, we could pick up metals and take them to the scrapyard for money from old farms around the countryside and people we know that just save stuff like that, and they'll give us that for some work around their farm or whatnot. Mm-hmm. So the first week I was out, I was able to stack up on, about $400 or $500.
So as he mentioned, he was out on parole from a recent stretch of time inside prison. So I asked him to talk me through that incident that saw him in prison for the very first time.
I was on felony probation for an assault with a dangerous weapon and receiving concealed stolen property. Well, we was at a party, and a guy sucker punched me through the window of a truck and took off. Him and I have had words going on for several times. He was threatening to beat me up and all kinds of stuff, all over a girl that I used to date, and he dated her little sister, and he was older than me, and she was way younger than us. So I'd always cut into him about him being too old to be dating a 13-year-old girl. I don't know. He felt he had to stick up for her older sister, and he was always this and all that because I broke up with her, called her the B word, and I guess that didn't sit well with him. So after several months of back and forthness, we finally ran into each other. He was 2 years older than me. I figured we'd get it done with. We're going to fight, do whatever we got to do. It's over with.
Yeah.
You ain't going to threaten me. You know these people. I ain't worried about all that. You sucker punched me, took off. We're going to finish this. Well, we all met, and there was like 300-some people there. And by the time I got there, my buddy already kind of tossed him around, beat him up pretty bad. He got put in his car, and when they were leaving, his buddy hit my aunt, who was 18 months older than me and went to school with him, hit her with the car and just yelled out, "Sorry," and squealed the tires. Well, she was limping, and so I jumped in my truck and I took off after him. You know, I still felt some kind of way because I didn't get to fight him myself. But I can't jump on somebody who was already on the ground. But they hit my aunt with the car. I took off after him. I passed him and slowed down, and he went around, sideswiped my truck. I sped up and got really close behind him and went to pass him. Well, I didn't go all the way around, and I nicked him with the corner. I slowed down. He kept going. I sped up and just rammed him from behind, shot him off into the ditch. And they said if I would have stopped and reported an accident, I would have just got an accident.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a driver's license, and I left the scene of a crime, so they charged me with assault with intent to do great bodily harm, less than murder.
Wow.
For that.
So he found himself in front of a judge with these charges and was placed on parole, meaning he would have to toe the line or find himself straight off to prison. Tony lives in a part of the world where guns and hunting are a way of life. You don't just hunt for fun, you do it to put food on the table. Well, as a felon on probation, handling a firearm or being in possession of one is a big no-no. Even more so is actually firing that weapon. And Tony ticked both of those and added an extra one for good measure. So how long were you in prison for that first situation?
A little over 2 years.
And that was at the age of 17.
Yeah, well, I was on felony probation first, and I violated that because I shot a deer from the window of my truck at night, which is poaching.
Right.
And because of being a felon around the gun, they violated my probation and sent me to prison, resentenced me to prison.
That must have been quite terrifying for you, being that young.
Yeah, I've seen a lot. I've done a lot on my own. And when I first got into the cell block, it was like a giant bird cage that was like 6 stories high, and people yelling all kinds of obscenities and so much noise and chaos going on, and reality hits you, and words can't really explain it.
No, I can imagine.
I mean, it's a feeling not too many will ever. People won't admit it, but you see it. You see it on their face. You know a first-time person coming in there. It's the way it takes over somebody's whole being. The shock of reality.
So Tony spends 2 years as a kid in a man's world. He said that it scared him enough to not ever want to have to go back again. So when he came out, he was determined to make a positive change in his life.
I didn't want to be like the people I watched go home and come back and go home and come back in the short period of time that I was in there.
Yeah.
That I had family and friends out there that needed me. And so I went home and I hit the ground running. I had plans. I built a business that was successful. I went to start my first year with $75,000 in signed contracts in landscaping and lawn mowing and snow removal. I had subdivisions, a contract with the county. Actually, it was 3 counties. It's called OSHA, Oakland Livingston Human Service Agency, that takes care of older disabled adults. I was reintegrating into the community in a way. I wasn't making a lot of money because they only made money off of donations. They didn't make money. They took donations to help get these jobs done. But to me, it was my way of getting back into the community, paying for any wrongs that I haven't paid for, and trying to rebuild a good name, a good rapport.
Did you come from a very small community where sort of everyone knows everyone?
Yeah.
So everyone knew about what you had done to get into prison?
Yes, correct. When I would go house to house trying to just sell myself, or, passing out flyers for gutter cleaning and spring or fall cleanups. There was many times I knocked on doors, people recognized me and slammed the door in my face.
Right.
Other times they recognized me and gave me a chance, and then come out to let me know that they've seen a change or that I wasn't the person that they'd heard of or thought about. But growing up, the newspaper has had me in the newspaper on the front page from everything from sports, academics, 4-H, as a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14-year-old, but because of the one thing I did, kind of erased all that, and I've been defined as that one wrong I did.
You were obviously building towards a better life. At what point did that all sort of start going wrong, do you think?
It never went wrong.
Okay.
It's some things in between the family and relationships between me and people in my family or the girl I was dating, and choices that I make to venture out on the woman I was with. But other than that, I wasn't fully doing everything right, but I felt I was doing what I felt was right. I wasn't condoning an illegal activity. Hunting with a gun on parole. I was a felon. I ain't allowed to have a gun. All right, that's illegal activity. I was sitting in the woods trying to harvest a deer to put on the dinner table for my family. And then, that's against the law. I'm not allowed to have a gun. But I wasn't out robbing, stealing. I wasn't out causing mayhem, getting drunk, driving around, being an idiot. I was just caught between trying to prove myself to my dad and support a girl and a kid.
So is this your partner had a child, or is this your child?
Her child.
So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Tony talks us through the first time detectives arrived at his house to ask him a few questions about a friend of his who had been shot and killed, supposedly over money.
I just thought they were playing some good cop, bad cop. I said, I don't want that. You're going to put that in my hand. I don't know nothing about it.
You know what time it is. Yes, it is thanks time from me to you for continuing to support this show. Don't forget, we have our closed private Facebook group, which you can join at any stage right now. Just search 1 Minute Remaining Podcast on Facebook and jump in there, where we have open dialogues and conversations about all of the stories that we talk about. People ask me questions regularly, and I get back to as many people as I can. You also can jump in there and just chat amongst yourselves. It's a great community, and people are really getting involved and chatting about these stories. So get involved right now. Search 1 Minute Remaining Podcast, and I'll see you in the Facebook group. So before we jump into the crime that Tony was accused and later found guilty of, it's important to understand the area where Tony lived. And to help me get a better picture of that area is journalist Lisa Roos Church.
I am a judicial and court reporter with an organization called Michigan Information Resource Services. However, as it relates to the Anthony Duke case, I was a crime beat reporter for the Howell newspaper called the Livingston Daily Press and Argus.
So can you tell me a bit about Livingston County itself?
Well, I didn't live there, but it's It's like any other community, frankly, in my opinion. Well, except for the fact that it seems to be mostly white and had a KKK history. It has some small communities that I consider to be rural, which is Iosco Township, which is where this crime occurred. I believe Iosco's population, I think it's about, I want to say 3,000. You might want to double check that though.
Yeah, right.
It's not very big.
Yeah.
It's a rural area. I believe it's, to give you an idea, it's my understanding that it's mostly served by private wells or septic systems. So it's,
yeah, right off
in my opinion, rural.
Yeah.
It's country.
Yes, it's really country. So a lot of big properties. Like Tony's been telling me that he lived on a big property, and his next door neighbour was the guy that was killed, and he would sort of jump on a 4-wheeler and drive over fields to get to his house. So it's a very, as you said, rural sort of area.
Yes.
Would you consider it as a cliquey, like everybody knows everybody type situation? Everyone's sort of in each other's business.
Well, you get that at any small town. So yeah, I suppose it could be if you're from there and you know everyone.
The case itself, obviously, you were in the courtroom when all this was taking place, and we know that Tony said that it was not him that committed this crime. Did you get a sense of Tony himself?
He was not, shall we say, a person who was lily white. He had a background. If I recall correctly, he got into a fight before the murder.
Yeah, when he was 17.
That led to charges. So, I mean, he was known, but I don't think he was known for murder until the actual murder occurred.
Ronald Hauser was a 47-year-old man who lived alone in a secluded house in Losco Township. Ronald had owned and ran a tree trimming business, Timber Tree Services, in the town for over 20 years. This is a business in which Tony Duke himself would work. He and Ronald were in fact close neighbours and friends who would spend a decent amount of time together. Where did he live in sort of respect to you? Did he live close to you?
Yeah, just around the corner. I used to ride the 4-wheeler through the field, through a couple of fields. To me, it's more or less just crossing a couple tree lines.
And obviously, as you said, you used to spend quite a bit of time together.
Yeah, he was always there, if he wasn't working or if we weren't working with him, go over there and hang out, do some chores, because he knew, like Brian and I always had regular jobs, so he would keep good tree cutting jobs where we could all go have fun and catch up on the week, and put some cash in our pockets. Or he had repeat customers that actually always asked for us.
Yeah, because you did a good job, I'm assuming.
They liked the way we worked, and the show we'd put on sometimes, swinging from trees and pumping brush up hills, the way we'd take a tree down, some people just find rather spectacular.
Yeah.
And we knew how to conserve our money. We never needed something before it was time for them to pay or anything. We always had our own money for lunch, water, whatever, snacks. A lot of guys would be begging for $5, $10 before we left the gas station in the morning so that they could get pop and some candy bars or coffee or even lunch. He didn't like that, but he'd help guys out. He would, but he'd like to get the job done and do everything we had to do, and then we could relax and reap the reward from our hard work.
On New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2011, Ronald Hauser is discovered shot in the basement of his home, off Roberts Road near Farmer John's Lane. He'd been shot once through the heart. Now, before we get into the details and timeline of events, I asked Tony how he first found out that his friend had been killed. So obviously, you were close with this guy. So when you found out about his passing, it must have been a shock and very upsetting, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was. Didn't really know what to think or say.
Did you get a phone call from someone to tell you that it had happened, or how did you find out?
Yeah, my friend Zach actually called me and told me about it. But I didn't believe me. He's like, no, he says, I'm over here. It's for real. This kept saying how messed up it was. Then when I went to call my dad about it, my stepmom knew. She told me that my dad and his friend were locked in the barn all morning, that Ron had passed away or been shot and found dead in his house. And they've been locked in the barn all day, that a couple other guys couldn't even get into the barn with them, that they've been locked in the barn for hours. And she told me that she didn't know what was going on, and she would have him call me as soon as he could. And later on that day, I passed him driving down the road hours later and called him. You know, he recited the same thing I already knew, and basically after that, it's like nobody knew what was going on, and everybody suspected everybody else. So people kept conversation short. Nobody wanted to really hang out with anybody, meet longer than they had to, if they had to meet at all. Even his own immediate family stayed by themselves.
So you say everyone suspected everyone else. So obviously it's a very small community, so everyone kind of just looks at everyone else and wondering who could have done it.
Right. You know, 'cause that's what the detectives kept saying, was it had to have been someone that knew him because of where he lived and how he lived. It just wouldn't make sense anyway, other than it had to have been someone that knew him or that was close to him.
So inevitably, while detectives were investigating the murder of Ronald Hauser, they called Tony and asked to speak with him. Here's Tony to talk us through that first meeting.
Like a month after the murder, they called me and asked to meet them at my house to talk.
Right.
I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. 'Cause, you know, I knew the guy. The word had it they was just surfacing around talking to everyone that he knew.
Yep.
You know, so I went there. I was coming down the road, and I seen the guy in my back fenced-in yard standing by the pond, walking around.
Right.
I didn't think much of it. I thought he was taking in the view, you know. It's a spectacular view. I grew up having people stop, asking if they could take a walk around the pond, you know. There's a nice grassy path that leads around. It's almost 3 acres.
Yeah, wow.
Just around the one pond itself is like 3 acres. And I pull in the driveway, my parole officer and a detective are there. They meet me and tell me, oh, we're going inside and have an interview. And then I walk through the back gate and meet the other detective, you know, and, oh, nice place, da-da-da-da, you know. I said, yeah, it looks like you made yourself right at home. And he snickered. Well, we went in the house. They did a little home check. We're talking, and then that same detective went back outside, only to return, however long later, with some plastic sabots in his hand. I recognized as sabots.
What are sabots?
They're a plastic casing that encases the lead slug or bullet as they pack it into the shell. It's encased, the slug itself, and it helps it travel straight down the barrel after it's fired.
Right, so it's a casing,
well,
a bullet casing.
Right, and it's called a sabot for a rifled barrel, and a smoothbore barrel, another word would be called a wad. It'd be considered a wad. Anyways, I just thought they were playing some good cop, bad cop. I said, I don't want that. You're going to put that in my hand. I don't know nothing about it. Well, he left. Well, they came back asking if anyone shot here, this and that. And so I put it together. I said, well, obviously, them little sabot hats you got match something, so let's not beat around the bush here. I ain't got time for all that. I've been doing this too long. I know how you guys play. I says, you know, I'm not a part of none of this. Well, just talk to me directly. Enough of this beating around the bush. He says, yeah, you're right. Something matched.
You have 1 minute remaining.
We're going to get cut off, but are you able to give me a call back?
Yeah.
Yes, there's our friend to wrap up this episode. Still to come, the more digging I do, the more I find there are less people wanting to get involved in Tony's story.
I don't know if she wants to get involved and stir a bunch of crap up again, so
Plus, I get a Facebook message from a former employee of Livingston County who initially says they want to stay out of it, but eventually begins to open up with some allegations regarding certain members of the sheriff's office. Okay, so I just got this message from this guy who used to work for Livingston County. I've told him he can remain anonymous. And I asked him if he knew this detective. His response, holy shit, is dirty, always has been, real asshole too. Well, he's really going to town now. Next time on 1 Minute Remaining.
1 Minute Remaining is a Mash Pumpkin production. Hosted and produced by Jack Lawrence. Editing and sound design by Jack Lawrence and Dom Evans. This podcast is part of the Acast Creator Network.